this is the superintendent, like the high people, the leadership in the school board. So then we got off the call and I had a reflection. The unrest started with kids. It was youth that were leaving school who were basically trapped. They couldn't get home because they stopped all the transportation. If you look at those like reenactments on HBO and stuff, and you see that famous scene with the police and the youth that were throwing rocks, that was what kicked off that day. From that incident over at Mondawmin is when the unrest really happened. So that was one thing. So keep a note there. We needed to engage youth and support youth in that moment. The second piece, let me tell you how I even met No Boundaries Coalition. And this is my brother, I love him. Wasn't always like that, but this is my brother. So I'm listening to the radio. I was listening to Laura Young's morning show. And I was at work. At that time, I was a state employee. And you know how you might be listening to TV or radio or something, and then what you were initially listening to turns off, but you kind of still listening to the next thing. So it's this guy on the radio, and he's just ranting, rah, 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 rah. It's just him, nobody else. So he's upset, he's not happy around what's happening in the community. And he said, well, some group named No Boundaries Coalition is having a meeting today at St. Pete Clay at 6 o'clock. And I'm gonna go around there and see what they doing. I said, I'm going to. And that's literally how I got engaged with No Boundaries Coalition. I heard Donnie on the radio. He was very passionate about what was happening and wanted to make sure that the community was in good hands and that the right people were at the helm. I heard it, it got put on my heart. I went to that meeting and I've been there ever since. That was the end of April 2015. So No Boundaries Coalition, I'm a resident of Sandtown, the 2 blocks from here. No Boundaries is a resident-led organization that does work in 7 neighborhoods in 21217. So at the time I came, they started doing work along with my pastor that I want to acknowledge, Dr. Lisa Lee. I think she'll be up on the second panel. But they started doing work with churches, other organizations, even engaging the police in that moment around what could be done after this terrible death of a young man who lived in our community. So I joined, I got involved, they were training people, I grew, I joined their board, I led their board, and then I came on as an employee. And a lot of people who are engaged with No Boundaries know that I'm very passionate around pipelines of leadership within our communities. Just taking the average, ordinary people and making them leaders or giving them the tools so they can actually lead. But since 2015, we started programming. Before the organization, they called themselves advocates. They were asking questions. They were leading conversations. They were doing things to get answers around why Sandtown and other communities look the way they look. From there, we went on listening tours. We were listening to what the community wanted. And from there, we learned that the community wanted more opportunities for youth. The community wanted more opportunities for fresh produce. The community wanted to have some accountability with the police. Because the police, we can argue with y'all today, but back then the police were they were really just doing what they wanted. I love Officer Lee, he knows that. We're good friends. But from there, we started programming that addressed all of those areas. Now, 10 years later, we still have a stall at the Avenue Market called Fresh at the Avenue, selling fresh produce. We're the only stall in that market that sells fresh produce. We run a workforce development program with that stall. We have a youth organizer project they call themselves NEO, but it stands for No Boundaries Youth Organizers. Since the start of the consent decree, our youth actually did a training video that trains the youth about youth and police interactions. Almost every sworn officer has seen that video as a part part of training with the consent decree. We have a civic culture program. One of our biggest things we did was double up the vote. Mr. Bond talked about Pete Welch. Well, Pete Welch was the council person and no one could get a seat with him, not just their group. So we went door to door. We encouraged people to vote. I will never, until the day I die, remember. In 2014 is when it was the last gubernatorial election before Freddie Gray. Over at Lillian Jones, they looked us in our face and said, the politicians don't come to Sandtown because only 257 people voted. And it was about 3,000 people registered to vote in our neighborhoods. So we went door to door. We partnered with other organizations, churches. We had a pastor, Elder Harris, that like lived on the roof for a week until we were able to double that vote. In 2016, because if you remember, that was the year that we were getting a new president, and that was the year we were getting a new mayor, because the mayor didn't survive Freddie Gray. So that was an open seat as well. So we did our thing. We were able to double the vote in the primary, and we quadrupled the vote in the general election, and we've been able to kind of maintain good engagement in our communities ever since. I want to highlight some ladies that are running, Tracy as well, who went through our project, the Block Captains, where we have recruited and trained people in our neighborhoods that were already doing good work, just making sure that they had the tools and supporting them in their work. So ladies, thank you for the work that you continue to do, because your work that you're doing in the community is an offshoot and a branch from what we have so tirelessly put together.